On August 7th, 2024, I experienced something that made me question everything I had believed for the past 50 years. I was born in a small village in Morocco and migrated to the United States 25 years ago. For the past 10 years, I've served as an Imam at a small mosque in Texas. My life has revolved around my faith and serving my community. I am married with 3 children. From the outside, my life appeared peaceful, orderly, and full of devotion. Yet, deep inside, I always felt a void, as though something essential was missing. I learned Islam at a young age. My father taught me the Quran and instilled traditional religious values. When I moved to the US, I worked hard to share my knowledge and faith with my congregation. I delivered sermons and did everything I could to meet my community's needs. But over time, everything became routine. My acts of worship turned into surface-level habits, and I struggled to find spiritual depth. My prayers often became moments when my mind wandered. Between serving my congregation and providing for my family, I felt trapped in a life that lacked deeper meaning. Then, one morning, everything changed. I was on my way to the mosque. The sky was slightly overcast, but it seemed like a calm day. As I approached a traffic light, I saw a speeding car coming toward me from the right. The last thing I remember was the terrifying sound of metal crashing and an intense pain that engulfed me as my vision went dark. When I opened my eyes, I struggled to understand my surroundings. The darkness I found myself in was unlike anything I had ever known. It wasn't the serene stillness of night, but an oppressive void that crushed my very soul. There was no sound, no light, only an overwhelming weight, as if I had been completely severed from God's presence. This void frightened me, yet I found myself drawn into it. After some time, a faint red light flickered in the distance. I felt myself being pulled toward it. I had no body, yet I was moving forward. I couldn't feel my steps, but my soul was being propelled by an invisible force. As I drew closer, I began to hear screams, not through my ears, but resonating deep within my spirit. These cries, filled with pain, regret, and sorrow, created a terrible unrest within me. Finally, I found myself standing at the edge of a vast chasm. Looking down, I saw something indescribable, a massive pit of fire with flames constantly rising. Thick smoke carried the stench of sulfur, making the air suffocating. The screams coming from the pit grew louder. Within the flames, I saw people writhing in agony, some chained, others tormented by grotesque creatures. These beings had humanoid forms, but were deformed, exuding a supernatural malevolence. As I looked closer, I began to recognize some of the people in the pit. Their faces were hauntingly familiar, and I felt a chill run through me. One of them was a man I had known in my youth, a neighbor who came from a Christian family. Although we had never spoken deeply, his face was now twisted in terror. He turned toward me and screamed, "I turned my back on God! I ignored him my entire life!" On the other side of the chasm, I saw a dark figure. It was a political leader, someone I had seen on the news. His face was nearly unrecognizable, but his cries were clear. "I sacrificed everything for power and wealth. I destroyed lives, and now I'm here." Further ahead, another face caught my attention. A world-famous figure, Muhammad Ali. The thought of him in the depths of hell shocked me. "I kept my faith superficial," he whispered. "I spoke his name but never truly believed. That is why I am here." As I scanned the chasm's edge, I saw more faces. Leaders, scholars, and even figures once considered exemplary. All of them admitted the same thing. They had carried God's name outwardly, but had never formed a genuine connection with him. Finally, I recognized a powerful figure from the Islamic world, Muammar Gaddafi. His eyes were wide with terror, and he was bound in chains. "Power became my God," he cried. "I forgot the true God, and now I'm here in this darkness." These scenes shook me to my core. The people I saw were not only those who had rejected faith, but also those who had lived with a shallow belief. This truth filled me with dread. Deep within, I heard a whisper emanating from the abyss. This is a place with no escape. Here, there is no hope. All paths are closed. In that moment, a profound fear settled into me. My soul felt completely trapped in the darkness. I wanted to flee, but there was nowhere to go. Standing at the edge of the chasm, I was left with nothing but fear and regret. I realized this place punished not just with physical torment, but with an unbearable spiritual weight. As I questioned the source of these torments, I felt an even deeper darkness waiting for me. The depth of despair I experienced at that moment is beyond description. But just as I felt utterly lost, something changed. A radiant light pierced through the darkness, cutting through the suffocating void like a blade. The chains binding my soul began to loosen. Out of the light emerged a figure. His presence was overwhelming, and yet his gaze was filled with infinite love and mercy. It was Jesus Christ. The darkness and horror of hell pulled me deeper into an abyss, until I found myself in a surreal, otherworldly courtroom. Though silent, I felt the weight of judgment upon me. Suddenly, a vision unfolded before me, showing every moment of my life, my prayers, sermons, and worship, alongside the good deeds I neglected, the responsibilities I ignored, and the hidden thoughts in my heart. I saw my selfishness while helping others, my failure to prioritize my family, and the routine nature of my worship, lacking true connection with God. My faith was revealed as shallow, shaped by habit and societal expectation rather than genuine devotion. I cried out, "But I'm an Imam, I guided others." Yet the truth was undeniable. My faith was a hollow shell. Grotesque creatures appeared, carrying heavy chains that symbolized my sins and failures. They cast the chains over me, and I collapsed under their unbearable weight, overwhelmed by guilt and helplessness. At my lowest point, a radiant light pierced the darkness, enveloping me in warmth, peace, and love. The chains began to fall away. From the center of the light, Jesus Christ appeared. His gaze, filled with infinite love and mercy, reached the deepest parts of my soul. "I love you and have come to save you," he said, breaking the chains within me. For the first time, I truly felt the overwhelming love of God. In Jesus' presence, the weight of hell vanished, replaced by freedom and forgiveness. I realized my only path to peace was to fully surrender to this love. And in doing so, my soul found true rest. As I thought I was lost in the darkness of hell, Jesus took another step toward me. His presence was so powerful that the weight on my knees lifted, and the chains binding me fell away one by one. He leaned down and gently lifted me up. His touch was filled with warmth and love, filling a void I had searched for my entire life. His eyes seemed to look directly into my soul. They carried infinite wisdom, yet also an indescribable mercy and understanding. At that moment, all the defenses and masks I had built around myself fell away. I stood before him, completely exposed and vulnerable. There was no place to hide, no excuses to make. Jesus already knew everything. "Ali," he said. His voice was both commanding and gentle. "I know everything about you, your deeds, your neglect, your regrets, your fears. But I love you, and I am here to save you. This is not the end. God is still calling you, but I am the one who will save you." His words reached deep into my soul. Everything I had believed and taught suddenly felt hollow. My prayers, my sermons, my acts of worship, they all seemed like an outer shell now, devoid of the deep connection with God I had neglected. Jesus didn't just reveal this to me. He showed me what it truly meant to have that connection. Memories from my past began to flood before my eyes. Prayers said with good intentions but little depth, acts of worship performed out of obligation, the pride I carried even as I helped others, all of it was shown to me. But Jesus didn't reveal these things to condemn me. He showed them to set me free. In his presence, the weight of hell vanished. The darkness was gone, replaced by pure light. Looking around, I found myself in a place that radiated God's peace. It wasn't a physical place. There were no walls, no boundaries, just everything bathed in light, love, and tranquility. Jesus met my gaze again. "Ali, you still have a chance to renew your life," he said. "Follow me." True peace and salvation can only be found in this relationship with God. Something changed within me at that moment. The emptiness I had felt in my soul was filled with his words. For the first time, I experienced true faith, not as a set of rituals, but as a direct encounter with God's love, forgiveness, and salvation. I understood the profound value of the second chance Jesus had given me. My soul had been freed from the crushing weight of hell's darkness and torment. I felt light, liberated, and filled with an indescribable peace. Yet, this peace brought with it a deep sense of responsibility. This experience wasn't meant only for me. It was a call to share the love, mercy, and salvation of Christ with others. The light in Jesus' eyes had erased every trace of darkness within me. I now knew exactly what I had to do. I would place my faith in him and follow his path. This was not just a transformation, it was a new beginning, a chance to rebuild my life with Christ at the center. In that moment, I fully understood that Jesus' love knows no limits and that he is the only way to God. When I opened my eyes, the radiant light of his presence was replaced by the pale ceiling of a hospital room. My body felt heavy, but the peace within me was overwhelming. Nurses and doctors surrounded me, their faces a mix of shock and relief. Then I heard my wife's voice, trembling with emotion. She was crying, but her tears were filled with joy. "Ali, you came back!" she exclaimed. The doctors explained that I had been clinically dead for 9 minutes. "It's a miracle," they said. But while they referred to it as a medical phenomenon, I knew it was far more than that. It was my salvation, my spiritual rebirth, and a new beginning. It became clear to me that not only had I been physically revived, but I had also been given a new spiritual life, one rooted in the truth of Jesus Christ. As I lay in the hospital bed over the next several days, I reflected deeply on everything I had experienced: the darkness of hell, the torment, the suffocating weight of the chains, and then the saving light of Jesus. It wasn't just my life that had been saved. My soul had been rescued, and I had been guided to the true love and mercy of God. This realization stirred something within me that could not be ignored. For most of my life, I had been so focused on fulfilling the outward duties of religion that I had neglected the deeper, more vital aspect, a real and personal relationship with God. Now, the words of Jesus echoed in my heart. "I love you and have come to save you." This love wasn't just for me. I felt an undeniable obligation to share it with others. After being discharged from the hospital, I knew I couldn't return to life as it had been before. The first thing I did was turn my attention to my family. I began to see my wife and children not as responsibilities, but as precious gifts from God. I approached them with a love and compassion I had neglected in the past. I started sharing the story of Jesus' love with my children in simple, heartfelt ways. At first, my wife was surprised and even hesitant, but the peace and love I carried began to touch her heart as well. The next step was far more challenging: returning to my congregation. As an Imam, I had spent years preaching Islam and teaching others how to live faithfully according to its principles. But my experience had shaken the very foundation of everything I had once believed. How could I reconcile what I now knew with what I had taught for so long? How could I explain to my community that my encounter with Jesus had completely transformed my understanding of God and faith? At first, I remained silent. I continued my duties as an Imam, leading prayers and delivering sermons, but my heart was no longer in it. Every word I spoke felt hollow because I knew I was no longer the man I had been before. I began to study the teachings of Jesus Christ, reading the Bible and exploring Christianity with a hunger I had never felt before. The more I read, the more everything began to make sense. The Gospels revealed a love so profound, a forgiveness so complete, and a grace so unearned that I knew in my heart it was the truth. I began to realize that my past religious practices, while well-intentioned, had been missing the key element of a personal relationship with God. Rituals and obligations had dominated my faith, but now I understood that faith was about love, connection, and surrender. Jesus had shown me what it meant to truly know God, and I could no longer ignore that truth. After months of prayer and study, I made the difficult decision to step down as an imam. I knew that continuing in that role would be a betrayal of the truth I had encountered. I shared my decision with my wife, who had by this point seen the transformation in me. Though she was initially shocked, she supported me, understanding that this was a decision I made with my whole heart. Since leaving my role as an imam, my life has become centered on Christ. Every morning, I pray not out of obligation, but out of love and gratitude for the mercy and grace I have received. I no longer carry the weight of my past mistakes because I know that Jesus has taken that burden from me. I feel a freedom and peace that I never knew was possible. My new journey is one of repentance, transformation, and sharing the love of Christ with others. I spend my days helping those in need, telling them about the boundless love and salvation found in Jesus. My worship is no longer a ritual, it is an outpouring of my love for God. I now know that God's love transcends all boundaries, and no matter how lost someone may feel, Jesus is there to rescue them. My mission is to share this love with as many people as possible, and to live each day as a testament to the grace and mercy that saved me. This isn't just a transformation, it's a daily renewal, a new beginning, and a calling I will follow for the rest of my life.